between the Hells Angel and a rival gang may have been in retaliation for murder.
Members of the Hells Angels
and police investigating the Hells Angels
and hoping that this will wipe out the entire organization.
Chapter have
the Hells Angels.
Ruthless but tactical in his dealings, Necati Arabaci is not known as the most feared president of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club for feeble reasons. His life has been a roller coaster of crime, dominance, constant run-ins with the law, and numerous unsolved mysteries. Born to ordinary Turkish parents, Necati's rise in the criminal underworld is a story that could astonish even the sharpest minds. Join us as we explore the untold story of Necati Arabaci, from his early life to his eventual rise as the most feared Hells Angels president. Every detail is bound to leave you speechless. Early beginnings of the Kingpin. Some call him Neko, while others regard him as the Godfather of Cologne. Either way, those who know him never say his name lightly. Interestingly, Necati Arabaci was born on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1972. While most people consider this a day of love, for Arabaci, it marked the beginning of a dark empire. Being Turkish immigrants, his parents had moved to Germany, where they settled in Cologne, a city that looked like a land of promise. For young Necati, however, it soon became the training ground for something far more sinister. As a teenager, Arabaci didn't follow the path of school and steady work. He gravitated toward the nightlife. Cologne was crawling with nightclubs, thus Arabaci soon found his first break as a bouncer. With his imposing frame, sharp instincts, and zero tolerance for nonsense, he quickly stood out. By his 20s, Arabaci was no longer just a bouncer. He quickly rose above the ranks, managing teams of bouncers across the city. But make no mistake, because Arabaci wasn't satisfied with running doors. While managing bouncers across clubs, he was also tactical in building connections, weaving together a network of tough men and loyal allies. As a result, every night at those clubs wasn't just about security, it was about power. With his strong foundation in the streets of Cologne, Arabaci was becoming a force that was impossible to ignore. But he was just getting started, and soon he set his eyes on the one place in Cologne where real money and real danger collided: the red light district, a place filled with brothels, strip clubs, underground deals, and some of the most brutal of crimes. The red light district was where the weak were eaten alive and only the bold thrived. For Arabaci, it was perfect. He began by running various brothels across the district. Names like Club 38, Pasca Cologne, and other infamous spots soon came under his shadow. The profits rolled in, and Arabaci soon became a man that no one wished to cross. But here's the catch: even as his empire grew, Arabaci had managed to keep his own hands clean. In order to do this, he had to rely on front men who ran errands, collected money, and handled the dirty work. Clearly, Arabaci wasn't ready to be reckless. Rather, he remained calculative, always preparing for something bigger. Every move was measured, every risk minimized. By now, his empire was growing fast, and it wasn't long before he connected with a group that would amplify his power beyond Cologne, beyond Germany, beyond anything he had touched before: the Hells Angels. The era of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. By the early 1990s, it was clear that Arabaci hadn't just joined the Hells Angels, but that he was also rising fast within their ranks, which was bad news for everyone else. The reason for this is nothing short of amazing. First of all, Hells Angels are not just an association of bikers who love Harleys. They're one of the most infamous outlaw organizations in the world. The club was founded in California back in 1948, and what started as a group of motorcycle enthusiasts soon turned into a global syndicate of crime, violence, and absolute loyalty. Since its formation, Hells Angels has grown rapidly, spreading far beyond California into 32 countries worldwide. Today, the organization boasts more than 6,000 members, consisting of men who went through the grueling process of earning their patch. Joining Hells Angels wasn't simple. To get in, you needed to own a Harley-Davidson, be at least 21 years old, and usually have a background in crime. The Hells Angels weren't interested in law-abiding citizens. They wanted men who could live by their ruthless code. Each chapter of the Hells Angels was tightly organized. At the top sat a president, a notorious figure who ruled with an iron fist. Loyalty wasn't optional, it was demanded. A strict code of conduct held the club together, and this discipline was what made them so powerful. Of course, with power came enemies. The Hells Angels clashed constantly with rivals like the Bandidos and the Satudara Motorcycle Club. These feuds were almost always about territory and influence, and this is where Arabaci's rise becomes clear. By leveraging the reputation and power of the Hells Angels, he sealed his dominance over Cologne's red light district. Rivals no longer dared interfere. His success was undeniable, but all that power and attention came at a cost. The bigger Arabaci's empire grew, the more the law began to take notice. Police investigations circled closer, pointing to Arabaci as the man pulling strings behind the scenes. Battles with the law, eventual arrest and release. As successful as Necati Arabaci had been, no one expected the day when the law finally came knocking. In 2002, the crime kingpin's empire was dealt a heavy blow. A special police task force that had been investigating him for years finally moved in. Leading the operation was Chief Prosecutor Jürgen Warten, who charged Arabaci with running a criminal organization, human trafficking, armed robbery, and pimping. The evidence was overwhelming. Arabaci eventually confessed to his crimes and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. For most people, this would have been the end, a crushing defeat, but for Arabaci, prison was not the end of his reign. It was simply a new chapter. Even behind bars, Arabaci was still in control. His carefully built system of frontmen and loyal enforcers meant that the empire didn't crumble in his absence. Orders still flowed, money still came in, and businesses kept running. From the outside looking in, it was as if Arabaci had never been arrested at all, and it gets darker. Reports suggest that during his prison term, Arabaci plotted the assassination of Chief Prosecutor Warten himself. The plan involved hiring an Albanian hitman from Duisburg to take him out, but the plan failed. Authorities had bugged the prison visitation room, and his conversations were recorded. The very fact that Arabaci could organize a hit on a top prosecutor from inside a high-security prison sent one message loud and clear: this man was unstoppable. But the story didn't end there. In a shocking twist, Arabaci was released halfway through his sentence due to a procedural error. A mistranslation which had been discovered in the trial transcripts created a loophole that his lawyers pounced on. Overnight, the man who was supposed to spend years behind bars walked free. His release sent shockwaves through Germany. Prosecutors were outraged. Law enforcement agencies were humiliated. Some, like Prosecutor Warten himself, allegedly left town out of fear for their lives. The police may have captured Arabaci once, but their grip had slipped. Still, Germany wasn't about to take chances. As a precaution, Arabaci was deported to Turkey, his home country. Authorities believed they had rid themselves of his influence, but this belief was a mistake that would haunt them for years. Deportation, a new beginning. For many criminals, deportation would be the end. For Necati Arabaci, it was an opportunity, a chance to rebuild, expand and reassert himself in new territory. Released with an agreement never to return to Germany, Arabaci quickly proved that exile meant nothing to him. Opposite to what authorities expected, he began expanding his operations across Turkey. Rumors swirled that he was now dipping into the international drug trade, overseeing shipments of heroin and other narcotics into Europe. And as if that wasn't enough, Arabaci still kept his grip on Cologne's red light district from afar. Through his trusted lieutenants and middlemen, his brothels continued running, money kept flowing, and his power remained intact. Arabaci had built a system so strong that even distance couldn't break it. His empire was portable, it traveled with him, but there was more. In Turkey, Arabaci reconnected with the Hells Angels and rose to even greater heights. In 2010, he reportedly attended an international meeting of Hells Angels bosses in Izmir. There, he was allegedly appointed president of the Hells Angels MC Nomads Turkey. For Arabaci, this wasn't just survival, it was promotion, and the rise continues. The opportunity for even greater power came when Frank Hanebuth, the leader of the European Hells Angels, was arrested in Spain. With Hanebuth out of the picture, rumors swirled that Arabaci was being groomed to take his place. His reputation as a man who could lead, survive, and expand made him the natural candidate. But success attracts enemies, and once again, law enforcement was closing in. In 2015, the Spanish government issued a warrant for his arrest, accusing him of being part of a criminal organization, drug trafficking, extortion, and involvement in brothels across Spain. The warrant was valid throughout Europe. But Arabaci had a shield: Turkey's refusal to extradite its own citizens. This meant that while he was wanted across Europe, as long as he stayed in Turkey, he was untouchable. That didn't mean Turkish authorities ignored him completely. Over the years, Arabaci has had multiple run-ins with law enforcement in his homeland. In 2018, he was arrested in Turkey, but after several months, he was released due to lack of sufficient evidence. Again in 2020, he was arrested a second time, only to walk free weeks later. These arrests only proved one thing, Arabaci knew how to play the system. With powerful contacts, loyal men, and airtight operations, he always managed to stay one step ahead. Jail couldn't hold him and courts couldn't break him. He was becoming more than just a gangster, he was becoming a legend. But the law wasn't his only problem. Rival gangs were also circling. The underworld is never static, power is always challenged. At this point, Arabaci revealed another skill, diplomacy. Instead of fighting everyone, he began forming alliances. One of the most significant was with the street gang United Tribuns. The alliance strengthened his position and showed that Arabaci wasn't just a brute, he was a strategist. He knew when to fight and when to merge. This move highlighted his ability to adapt. Just as he had conquered Germany, he was now conquering Turkey, and by extension Europe. His influence was undeniable. Protecting the legacy. Regardless of how much Arabaci's empire has grown, Arabaci has become more cautious in recent times. Rumors has it that he has been recently trying to legitimize some of his businesses, which includes hotels, clubs, and real estate. On the surface, Arabaci seemed to be moving toward respectability, but few believed he had truly cut ties with the underworld. His connection to the Hells Angels remained strong, and whispers suggested he still pulled strings in Europe's organized crime network. In recent years, rumors suggest that Arabaci moved to Dubai, where he now lives a quieter life, enjoying his wealth in the shadows. But don't be fooled. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Even from afar, Arabaci is believed to influence key decisions within the Hells Angels across Europe and beyond. What makes him even more mysterious is how well he has kept his personal life private. Details about his marriage, children, or family remain hidden. For someone so infamous, Arabaci has managed to shield his personal circle from the spotlight, which is another sign of his calculated approach to survival. Necati Arabaci embodies all of it. From Cologne's red light district to the highest ranks of the Hells Angels, he has maintained his legacy, survived the rugged terrains of outlaw biker gangs, and outsmarted entire systems designed to break him. His story is not just about one man's rise, it's about the challenge of tackling organized crime across borders. It's about how a single figure can bend laws, rival gangs, and even nations to his will. Arabaci remains a legend, feared by enemies, respected by allies, and untouchable by the law. What do you think about the story of Arabaci? If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, drop a comment on your thoughts, and stick around for more intriguing videos.